Hello again. I'm following up with a part 2 to my recent small talk around the Mandibil experience, and just a few annoyances I mentioned. That's life, right? There's Frankie Boy sings. That's life, and it's just one of those things. One thing I have sort of, if I've learned anything from running my own show, so to say, and criticizing a guy like Stefan Molyneux, is that I have learned to be a little more careful about taking care of my sort of, I try to make this as gentle and as correct as I can, right? But I don't want to be pushed around. And there's a sort of a fine line between, servicing people and being taken advantage of. It's not like I feel I'm being taken advantage of, but I want to be able to take things at the earliest possible level as I can. I don't want to, which was sort of a flaw to my own in my own sort of history before, that I would let things pass too long and then things would end up in sort of an explosion, to be a little dramatic about it, right? You have to put your foot down as early as you can to show where you stand. So you don't need to manipulate, or you don't not manipulate. So you don't need to go into a period of dread, or a period of if you folded once or twice, why would you suddenly start not to fold, right? So it's this thing about coherency and integrity in your actions with other people. And if I have some principles I am stating in my philosophy, it would be stupid if I didn't follow those principles in the way I act in my videos, or what I say and state in my videos, and how I go about commenting, whatever, right? I would have double standards, right? And I know it's not necessarily easy to do this, because everything in life is to some extent a negotiation, right? It's impossible to do all that you possibly want by yourself, though I like to be self-sufficient, right? But I also like to be able to negotiate with people, right? But the negotiation has to be back and forth in a stable manner, so to say, so both parties feel that they're not taken advantage of, right? And I would rather push back early than say, well, it's possibly nothing. Oh, this dude or this guy had a bad day or a good day. And, it's sort of a test. It's sort of a laboratory experiment. What happens if I do this? If I keep folding, I will just be, if I feel I'm being not treated sufficiently well, why would it change if I fold it, right? I have to push back in order to change it. And if people I push back against are not able to say, I guess you have a point there, right? Maybe I went further than I actually feel now when I, get the pushback. I sense that I might actually be in the wrong there, so to say, right? If they can do that and sort of say, okay, I guess I was, and it's funny, most people can't do that. It's particularly difficult for men to do it, I think, right? But it's also a big problem for many women. Maybe for other reasons, but men are very caring about the pride and their image and so on, right? And saying that you didn't behave or sort of admitting that you might not have behaved, optimally, right? Is like a small, losing the battle, right? Feeling smaller, right? And I understand that. I recognize the same feeling in myself sometimes, right? But that's why philosophy is so important, because that's the way you have been thinking about how you do things and how you should behave in order to have integrity, right? So if you can't admit a bad behavior, right? I'm not saying it necessarily bad. It might be me overreacting, right? But I only have my own emotions and feelings, senses to go with, right? So I can't sort of reject myself and say, well, I guess it's me, and I guess it's me. Then people who are not that way and who does not have integrity will say, okay, fine, well then you fault and I'm right. I don't have to admit that I'm wrong, so I'm not wrong because I don't have to admit it, right? This kind of rejection of sort of a cognitive dissonance of some kind, right? And I'm particularly disappointed about Einkraut, which I have long discussions of all sorts of things, and philosophical stuff and culture, music and movies and all sorts of stuff. He was a good friend, I sensed, right? But then he sort of flew off the handle and criticized me without any good reason, and sort of contradicted himself in the way he's approaching philosophy and saying, well, I asked him, well, how do you know that? But then tell me what you think. And so, no, if you think you know that, just tell me how you know it. Well, he couldn't, right? So it's like, I caught him in a bunch of bullshit, right? And he won't back down and fold and say, okay, I was stupid there. You're right. I was contradicting myself. I was claiming knowledge I couldn't have, and so on, right? But rather than do that, he would run away and never to be seen again, right? So it's and I'm fine with that. I was disappointed that, and as I stated in the part 1, I went back a week later, wrote to him in a private chat that, okay, are you ready to have a talk about this? Just to show that I am approachable and, want to sort things out, get to some kind of agreement, right? He didn't even respond to me. So things are basically settled there, right? I'm not going to, I haven't kicked him from the server. Maybe I should do it because, he deserves it, right? But I have a long line on my fishing rod, right? So I let him run for a while, but I might kick him if he doesn't turn up, right? So I'm fine with not folding for people. I think it's a bad idea for. It's not these kind of sort of if you're sort of an empath, right, as it's called, rather than saying you are a psychopath, then it's turned over to say you are an empath, as if it's a sort of a weakness, rather than point out the psychopath rather than the empath, right? Okay, but let's say I'm an empath, right? And that yes. Be satisfied and be happy about being able to have empathy, but don't let it be used as a weapon against yourself, right? Don't let people manipulate you by turning your strength into a weakness, by blaming you for this or that, or you should do this, and you're manipulating that. Most people, even if they don't know it, they are halfway manipulating, right? Nobody is stating the obvious, right? Or maybe not stating that nobody is, everybody seems to be somehow or some way or another interested in manipulating people's understanding of what is going on, right? And that's why I'm very, very, very focused on people getting to an understanding on what it means to know something, and that knowing something is purely your insight. I'm not saying that anybody else can't know anything, but what you know is yours, right? That's your knowledge, right? And if you have knowledge of something, then you can't give that knowledge to somebody else, right? You can't just hand over the knowledge. But that means that nobody can hand you knowledge. So people trying to manipulate you into have a particular understanding of what is going on, what exists, and how to interpret how things are moving around. Those things existing are moving around. Is a way of getting a grip on not being manipulated, right? It's you can sort of easily fall back into sort of an everyday kind of small talky stuff, right? And sort of forget your principles and forget philosophy and so on. But when you sort of back up a bit and say, okay, how about knowledge in this discussion? How about, all these central things in the philosophical discourse? Then, somebody violating Hume's Izzard, right? Just like I pointed out, that guy who wanted to discuss, and we agreed on the Hume Izzard, basically, as far as I understood, right? He violated Hume's Izzard by, folding when his partner told him what to do, right? So backing up a bit and see what, analyze what people are actually saying and doing. It's not. You don't have to wait for people to say the term ought, for instance, or is. It's not like that. There are other terms and words used that have the same connotation, right? And that is also why exactly Hume, as far as I would say, right, used the term things that are connected with an ought or an ought not, which is the same as saying, in my opinion, all terms that have any kind of moral commandment, right? And a moral commandment is some kind of statement that you're not commanding yourself around, right? You don't need to make a statement to command yourself. You just have to think and change by free will or whatever, right? But if you're commanding people, then it's morality. It's a moral commandment, right? It's an ought. If your girlfriend said, no, you can't do that because I have arranged whatever, right? You ought. It's connected with an ought, right? So he's basically violating Hume's Izzard gap. Or he is accepting that his girlfriend or wife or whatever it was is allowed to, the Izzard gap, right? So it's also this thing with, it's a sort of, this guy, he was obviously an intelligent dude, right? But he hadn't sufficient understanding that philosophy is not just some kind of academic, exercise where you sit in a room and you talk about high-flying subjects and can you get an is from an ought or whatever. It's about real life, goddammit, right? And even when his partner tells him, no, you can't, you ought not do that. Maybe she doesn't even have to do it. She just have to say, I have planned this on this day, and then oh my God, I have planned something else. But doesn't have enough backbone to say, well, I have arranged something with a dude. I have to discuss the Izzard gap, and if I didn't do that and accepted your ought, I'm actually violating my understanding of his Izzard gap. But he doesn't dare to do that. No. He'll sit in his ivory tower discussing on a abstract level philosophy, but philosophy in real life, no. That's just doing as you're told by your, pussy whipping girlfriend, right? And I told him I have no respect for that. You're a disgrace to your own philosophy. Right? And of course, I didn't hear from him again. But you know, and instead of him saying, well, that's interesting, let's discuss that, right? No, he took his, put his tail between his legs and ran back to his wife, basically, right? Rather than taking the challenge and accepting the criticism, right? That's bullshit. It's bullshit. And I put my foot down. I told him how I think, and now he's no longer in any kind of association with me, right? And that's what you want. You don't want corrupt people to be around you, right? He was very eloquent in his way of, he wrote some very long, involved comments on some of my Hume Izzard videos, right? And they were and he apparently very much loved to see himself write these long sentences, a long, dissertation of a philosophical nature. But when it came to real life, no, philosophy is completely disconnected from his real private life, right? So he's basically a douchebag, right? He doesn't have integrity. He doesn't understand what it means to have integrity, right? So fine. So off to the races, or what is called is I got rid of him, right? And that's what I would want. I don't want somebody around me who doesn't have integrity. So, okay. I am trying to force myself to get going with my book. I've been very hung up on work in the past at least 6 months, right? And more than that, I've been doing some study and taking some courses in product management and stuff. And I'm also sort of I feel I have reached a point where I'm sort of wouldn't say I'm getting tired of philosophy, but I'm sort of settled in my running this channel on philosophy has been partly an idea of my verbal notebooks on my philosophical development, so to say, during the 7 years of how much? Yeah, actually 7 years now, right? And I feel I'm sort of getting full of philosophy, that I can't find much detail of anything that I need to go further into. And that might be slight little things here and there. I'm not saying that it's perfect, anything like, very likely not. But that's why I want to, whip myself into submission and start get going with my book, because I don't want to, if I'm in this momentum, I don't want to lose that momentum, and so that I would have a harder time. I need to get back into writing, and I had a big hurdle that sort of the combination of metaphysics, knowledge, memories, concepts, this big thing going on in the mind, a description I need to make in order to get to epistemology, or get to my definition of knowledge, and what is not knowledge also, right? That was a big one. It was sort of a 4-dimensional something, right? Quite elaborate, right? And that's also something that I'm trying to get a right balance, in the sense that some things do not need to be very, very meticulous and detailed. I can get quicker through that kind of philosophy, but some things have to be settled very precisely, so I'm making absolutely sure that there is no misunderstanding of what I mean, right? And these things about concepts and qualia and memories and ideas and deduction and induction and all these things that are going on in your mind, more or less consciously, let's say, right? This has to be very well described as best as I can. And if I need to write 20 pages on it, then I need to write 20 pages. I don't think that it'll be that long, right? I'm making some diagrams and so on. I like to make some diagrams. In some cases, they give a much better overview than, particularly when we're talking about a time structure or anything like that, right? A diagram can sometimes say more than 1,000 words, so to say, right? So, but I want to get back into writing, but had reached the point where I was like, oh man, this is complex, right? I really have to keep my mind at, and I was sort of, let me take a break from it, right? And then I never got back to it. But I really want to get back to it and get going, right? And, it's sort of a scenario of a good beginning is half the battle, right? If I get off to a very, very good beginning, the last bits of settling knowledge and objectivity and a moral principle shouldn't be that difficult. If I know where I have to go, right? If I understand how I want to approach it. And I'm taking another route than basically any philosopher I think have ever done. I might, there might be somebody out there who has made the same approach, but I'm taking it from a purely subjective stance, right? I am creating my principle. I'm arguing for why I am using this principle. Nobody can take that away from me. They can come and point to the arguments or the structure, the strings of argument that or axioms are misleading, whatever, something. And I could maybe adjust my philosophy and then maybe adjust my principles following that. But to the best of my understanding, the way I've argued in this book, it results in this principle. And that's the principle I'm following. I am not telling anybody else, you should do this or you should do that. I can tell myself, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. I'm not violating any Izzard gap there, right? And that's the problem with philosophers. They think that they have to create commandments and tell everybody else what to do, right? But the point is, if I'm following a principle and I can argue very well for why that is a functional principle for me, other people might be inspired and say, well, I will adhere to the same principle based on your arguments. I can't find any flaws in it. I agree with the arguments. And it follows these from these arguments and these statements and these axioms that this is the functional principle. I will use the same principle. Then there are 2 people using the principle. And then there's 3 people and 4 people and 5 people. And potentially, at some point, most of the world is using this principle without me telling anybody that what they should do, right? So that's my approach. I think that's the only way to do it. Otherwise, you will be, first of all, most people's, all philosophy I've seen is just sort of some kind of, 10 commandments, right? It's the commandment approach. Do this, do that, right? And then when you read the commandment, you have to be nice or something like that. Fuck that shit, man, right? What does it mean to be nice? Well, you have to go back to the philosopher who has to tell you to do this, do that, do this, do that, and they're violating Hume's Izzard gap, right? So it's... Let's see how it goes, right? I don't know how... I might do some driving videos in the near future, right? Let's see how it goes. I'm trying to get back into deconstructing Keith Frankish illusionism lecture series, and that might be a very long haul, right? But so be it, right? Let's see. Otherwise, if any of you out there want to have a debate on anything, I'm open for any kind of discussion, right? I'm fine. Hook up with me via the Discord server, and let's figure something out, right? And if you are not very well versed or don't think you're very good at philosophy, I will sort of wind it down and say, just sort of help you start the thinking or so on, right? If you want to do something online or live, let's hook up, right? Let's find a day and do it. I would love that. So I'm very approachable in that way. I'm going to state my philosophy, but as gentle and as accommodating as I can. And you can challenge it if you want. Fine. I'm open for anything. I want to be challenged, right? I want to, if I have bad philosophy somewhere, I really want to change it, right? So, but otherwise, share, like, and subscribe. Check out the Discord, link below possibly. And if you listen this far and you think it's, time to get back into some philosophy, well, go check out some of my recent videos if you haven't checked them out. There's a deconstruction of some of the things I did with Stephen Molyneux, and there's also the deconstruction of Bernardo Kastrup, analytic idealism, that you might want to check out. By the way, I haven't heard further concerning his copyright infringement claim, but check it out and leave a comment. Let's see what happens. Have a nice day.